Hello, sorry about the format of the video today. Uh, Due to complications with the length of the video, I ended up having to do it like this because it just ended up being easier. So this is teaching the game part 2. This is actually playing the game. So first things first would be the command phase. Uh, both players get one command point at the beginning of each command phase. Not just whoever's turn it is, both players do. Command points are used for stratagems, which are they're kind of like gotcha cards uh, to use in battle to give you an extra edge in combat or whatever. Uh, there are two parts to the command phase. Part one is the abilities. Uh, Simple enough. Any abilities that a unit may have that take place in the command phase would be activated during this time. Once that is taken care of, the next thing to do would be Battle Shock then. Battle Shock will only occur if a unit is below half strength unless otherwise mentioned. I say otherwise mentioned because I have seen a number of units that are able to force a Battle Shock test no matter what. So for a Battle Shock test, you roll 2d6 dice. If the result is equal or higher than the leadership stat, the test is considered passed and you don't have to worry about anything. If it's lower, then you have failed the Battle Shock test, and that unit is now considered Battle Shock. Um, if a unit is Battle Shocked, then three things happen. They have no objective control for the rest of that turn. They cannot be targeted by stratagems for the rest of that turn. And if they attempt to flee close combat, which I see I have misspelled here, that's wonderful. If they attempt to flee close combat, then they have to make desperate escape attempts, which means that I can roll and potentially hurt your guys as they're fleeing. So after the command phase, you would have the movement phase. There are 4 different movements that are available for each unit. The first one is remain stationary. That is a pretty self-explanatory one. You just don't move. There is benefits to doing this, as if you're holding an objective marker, or uh, if you have a heavy weapon, because if you have a weapon that has the heavy keyword, you actually get a +1 to hit with that weapon if you don't move. The second option is to move normally. Uh, you can just move in any direction up to the number that's mentioned in your movement statistic, which, by the way, a great app to use when trying to build your army and look at their stats and stuff is Battle Scribe. Very easy to use and free. Um, Different units can move different amounts of inches, but on average you'll see 6 inches. The whole unit must move at the slowest speed, which by that I mean if you have a leader unit attached to a bodyguard unit, um, and one of them moves slower than the other, the unit has to move at the slowest model speed. The third option is to advance. This is a very simple one. You roll 1d6, and whatever the result is, you add that to your movement. However, if you advance, you are not allowed to shoot or charge unless otherwise mentioned. There are rules that allow you to do that, and weapons that have the assault keyword allow you to shoot even if you have advanced. I seem to be stumbling over myself. I apologize. The fourth movement thing is fall back. You can This only occurs if you decide to leave close combat. You can move in any direction, but you cannot shoot or charge again. It's kind of like advancing. Another thing that's not mentioned on here is that if you move over an enemy model while you're doing a fallback move, you also have to take a desperate escape attempt for that. So units that are in deep strike or strategic reserves can be brought in during at the end of the movement phase, at the end at turn 2, not turn 1, because there was an issue with people bringing stuff in turn 1 and just destroying fields. Next up would be the shooting phase. First, you would select your unit and declare who is shooting at who. You would roll the number of dice equal to the attack characteristic of the weapon, which, by the way, not all units have a ranged weapon. And each of them have a designated number of attacks. That's what you'd roll. The roll is considered a hit if it is equal to or above the ballistic skill of the weapon, which can vary. So if it's like a +3 ballistic skill, then a 3 or higher will count as a hit. Next up, after that, you would roll to wound for each hit that you land. For this, it's with the strength of the weapon versus the unit toughness. So if they are equal, then you have to roll a 4 or higher. If the strength is more than the toughness, you have to roll a 3 or higher. If the strength is double the toughness, you have to roll a 2 or higher. But it works the same way as well, with toughness being higher and toughness being double. So each wound roll landed is another save the opponent has to make. Your opponent has to roll equal or higher than their save characteristic, or their unit takes damage. This is a stat that can be affected by armor penetration, which is what AP here is. Basically, if you have a weapon that has armor penetration -2, that means they have to take away 2 from their save roll. It can be pretty brutal against the right unit. And it is possible to make it so they can't make a save whatsoever. After the shooting phase is the charge phase. This is a very simple phase. You select a unit within 12 inches of your unit and declare if you want to charge them or not. You do not always have to charge if you're able to. Next, you would roll 2d6, and you have to end within 1 inch of the opponent for it to be considered a successful charge. You cannot charge if you have advanced or fell back. Talked about this earlier. Failing to make a charge means that you don't move and can result in you being open to enemy fire. So obviously what you want to do is try and get as close as possible before you make that charge. Next then would be the fight phase. The fight phase only occurs if a unit has charged or was already engaged in close combat. This plays exactly the same as the shooting phase, with the exception that the opponent can hit back. Basically, once you attack, even though it's still technically your turn, your opponent can fight back with that unit. All units have a melee weapon. That is not something you need to worry about. Just they're not all necessarily good melee weapons. You cannot shoot in close combat unless you have a weapon that is considered a pistol, which that's all they do. Is their special rule is that you can shoot them while in close combat. However, vehicles and monsters are allowed to shoot in close combat and subsequently can be shot at, though it is a -1 to hit. Last but not least is winning the game. The turns go back and forth until each player has gone 5 times. So there should be a total of 5 turns. There are two possible win conditions when playing Warhammer. Either you can score more than your opponent, which is good if it's a case where you heavily outnumber your opponent, or you can take your opponent completely off the table, which can also end the game pretty early. Um, a lot of my wins have been like that myself. That's typically one you want to do where you realize that you won't be able to beat them in objectives, so you just have to take as many as you can out. And yeah, that is all there is to it. Like I said, I apologize. This is not in the usual format. The other video was just too long to input, then YouTube would have not liked me. So, all right. Hope you all have a good night.